Thank you very much, Doug. I especially appreciated and admire the diligence it takes to actually update the bulletin boards, performance boards weekly. That's really awesome. Last year I was over at a large municipal organization about 40 miles west of here, and I was drawn to one of the bulletin boards by a slightly yellowed piece of paper, and it was an invite to a quality circle, and I noted it was dated 1987. So very, 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 very great job there. A couple questions for Doug. I'll just follow up on that. How difficult was it to get that discipline of updating the boards in place, and how do you keep it there so you don't fall back from that?
Well, our world might be a little different. Our average, we processed about 9 million parts last year. Our average turn time for that was 4 business days. So if we have quality issues, a week is actually almost too long. We want our employees to know immediately because it's still fresh in their mind, those type of things. But the discipline on the boards, it is tough. It remains tough because these are literally, we had to buy a plotter. They're approximately 6 feet long by 3 feet tall. There's 9 of them throughout the facility. We have 45,000 square feet. So it is a task. They're in color. They're visually nice. We have a lean coordinator that we specifically hired. That's his task. But again, his task is only to get the data, produce the data, mount the data, and then he walks away. It's up to the employees every single week. They gather around. They talk about the issues. They talk about how the company's doing, and of course how their department doing. Visual S, those type of things, overtime, labor, costs, training, safety, you name it.
Great, thanks, Doug. Any other questions? Well, why don't we just move along then? We're going to ask Ken and Jose to come up and speak with us a moment about workforce development. And this is I'm sensing this is very valuable to us all, so if we do go over a little bit into lunch, I'm just going to ask you to eat just a little bit faster, but I mean, this is the essence of what I think you're here for, so.
Well, thank you. Thank you. My name's Ken Trevino. I'm with MPC Industries. I have the pleasure of working with Mario and with Jose here. And the subject today is going to be our workforce development integration process. But before we get started, I want to do a little
No weight. Hey, don't pull a muscle there.
Oh, no weight, no resistance. Okay. No, I'm ready now. Okay. All right. But, really, the workforce integration process is the one key area that ties the upper level ones that our first 4 topics talked about to the next phase, which is how do we deploy it. We're talking about that 90%, some people spend 90% of the time on strategy and then only 10% on the actual implementation. Well, this is the one key area where we start pulling it all together. So it doesn't just manage up, but it manages down as well. So next slide. The key things we want to identify here is what does our organization do? What topics do we select for workforce development? And those are generated through our top 4 initiatives that you just heard about. What is the selection? How does that selection integrate with the strategic goals? And how the workforce training plan is prepared and monitored. Next. This is a flow chart of our operations. We have a preparation, a collecting of the data. We review it, and it's a feedback. These are templates that were available to us through C, and they had a model set up for us. So why not follow that model and see how it works well for your operations? The one key things that we learned here is that it got us off to a start. It set us in front of the path so that we could follow it. Because sometimes when we get into these documenting the process and the paperwork, we don't want to spend a lot of time there. We actually want to get it down to the people who make the difference and are effective in implementing our strategies. Next. So paralleling off of Mario's graphics, again, we're looking at our key people here, our process owners and our management staff. What are the key things that get pushed down or communicated to us are what are the key things for our measures that matter? What are the things that we can communicate and show and absolutely know that are positively making a difference for the company? And they're simple. They're simple. Some of the things are, for the operators on the floor is, well, how many cubic inches of can I grind a day? How many square feet can I polish a day? What's the goal? And why is that important? So we want to make sure that we're communicating that, and part of that is that integration process. But in order for us to do that, incorporate the measures that matter, the C metrics, the ISO, AS, lean initiatives, all of those things require an identification of a certain skill. You know, in Southern California, we have a certain demographic in our workforce. Ours is primarily Spanish-speaking people. So am I the best communicator for them? Perhaps not. But I also know that there are good bilingual communicators there that, if given the appropriate skills and the appropriate skill levels, they can become the effective trainers and the effective communicators, more effective than somebody who's talking in a foreign language, basically. So, next slide. So what are some of our key practices? We have, and we develop throughout the year, an annual workforce development plan. When we've been in the process now for we're going on our third year, where we look at our strategies and what are the skill sets that were lacking the previous year that we would want to develop and enhance and improve for this year. And then we set our plan to do that. And that goes down to one of the levels that we're not talking about here, and that's 2.1.1, and that's workforce development. We have ongoing employee qualifications, so that we're identifying, are there, based on, let's say we've got a lot of grinding business coming in, do we have the appropriate skilled qualified employees? And are our employees actually growing their skills, or are they maintaining the status quo? And it's important for us to know that too. We've got an ongoing leadership assessment and personal development strategies. So one of the fun things that we get to identify and really work with out here is we are not just having employees. We just don't have employees, and we're just not managers, but we're coaching and building leadership. And we're coaching and building leaders. So we want to identify what are the skills that we're looking for in our leaders and who are our top skilled people out there. And how can we strategically position them, whether it's on a safety team or whether it's in as an SME role, or what are the opportunities that we're going to have, and it could be as participating in Kaizen events or leading Kaizen events or working in a value stream mapping process. Where can we give them opportunities to showcase their skills and coach them so that their skills get stronger and better? Because what really happens here is once these skills start getting internalized, and it didn't happen perhaps the first year. The first year I think our employees were in shock. They're actually talking to us. They're actually asking us for our expertise. We're actually getting involved in the process. We're actually being included in the strategic planning process. Are you kidding me? No, we're not. Because they're key, they're integral to our success. There's too much lip service that goes into there, not enough action. You know that the action is there when you have to sit down, put that seatbelt on, and hold on tight because you're going to be going for a wild ride. It's because when the operators on the floor are driving the process from the ground up, that's when you know you're successful. And those ideas and information come to us so fast. So let's just take a look at some of the skills that we're looking at for our key managers. Next slide. We're looking for accountable, determined people. We're looking for a personality, a skill set that we know that they'll make good coaches. We can coach them in these skills to get them to the level that helps us be more successful and drives us into the future. Because we're in a great industry. I mean, you look at we just come back from the C conference. The aerospace, we're at the C conference, excuse me. We went to the Speed News conference where you start seeing and you get all the different industry analysts out there. we're in a great industry. We're growing by leaps and bounds, and I think that's part of what Doug was sharing with us earlier. We look at, today's workforce has got to be computer literate. They've got to be willing to communicate. They've got to deal well with stress. And they've got to move forward. And so we know that this becomes a recipe for us to help and assess our leadership, create action plans for them, and give them opportunities to demonstrate and learn from that. Next slide. So here to talk about some of the things that we did right is going to be Jose.
What Ken and Mario touched upon was that, we develop our operators, we develop our process owners, and we develop our leaders. And we've been fortunate to have a workforce that is performance-driven. And what we engage and help with that is that we develop measures that matter that are driven by market demands. When we see opportunities where there's a weakness, we see that opportunity as not as a weakness, but as an opportunity for growth and opportunities for kaizens. So we see training and development as a tool and not as a task. One of our great models at NPC and also at Western Case is that we put quality third. And considering that for an aerospace company that quality is third, why is quality third? Well, it's because family and safety come first. NPC is a combination of not only just operators, process owners, and leadership. We're also a group of families. Actually, about 6 to 7 families to mention. And in developing our workforce, we also have to involve everybody for any opportunities to grow, opportunities for improvement. And when we involve our operators, when we involve our people, when we involve our staff, we build commitment. And that's what we've done right. Now, in that process of doing things right, we've also learned a couple of things, and that's the next slide. We also learned that as driving our measures that matter, that what gets measured gets done. And what those measures have to be done is they have to be communicated. They have to be communicated across the shop floor. They have to be communicated across the leadership as well. And sometimes, since our workforce is primarily Hispanic, communication has to be done both in English and in Spanish. And that's what we've learned. Additionally, for our development of our leadership, we've assessed a certain level of technical skills that they have to reach a level to, and we also found out that there's a development of soft skills that they also need. So a combination of technical and soft skills are critical for their success. And when we find these opportunities for improvement and we develop opportunities for kaizens, when we want to get that executed, we just got to get it done and just forward out there so we could become a much better company. And I guess that's it. That's my last slide. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Jose and Ken. Just a quick question. As far as when you started to go in and try to start engaging the workforce, you mentioned that they had some surprise associated with that. Did they just feel that maybe you attended a sensitivity training and needed to talk with them, or how did you get past the surprise?
I think a lot of it is just straight, honest communication and building that trust factor that we're actually going to follow through on what we say that we're going to do. But part of it is also when you engage them in a training or in a good environment, bringing them in and sitting them down, talking to them, and really listening to what they're saying. That gets them off to a good start. Now, we also coupled this. We started it with other initiatives that are initiating the change, becoming AS certified and ISO certified, along with beginning of the C journey. But it's about talking the talk, but also walking the walk. And involvement builds commitment. And so, what we wanted to make sure that we did is we involved them, because no involvement is just the opposite, is no commitment.
Very good. Do we have a question out there? Yes. We have one in the back? Okay. All right. Well,
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
Brian, I have a question too.
There will be copies of the slides made available. Yes, Jeff.
Ken and Mario Jose, last November you presented a Kaizen activity involving employees. If I recall, there was like 40-something initiatives in different categories. It's 4 months later. I know you've got a lot of involvement with your new company and going back and forth and so on. Could you give a quick report card of how that's going? The good, the bad, the ugly, if you will, and go from there.
Well, the good news is that we had a lot of really great initiatives, a lot of great safety and quality suggestions that were initiated from our value stream map. And I would say that right now we're about 50% done with those items.
Okay.
And we are seeing really good results.
Great.
Now, just recently at the site visit to Hixson, Jose brought a group of people from we've got another company called Western Case, over to them. And I don't know where he got the idea, but he said, okay, guys, when you come back, I want to have 5 improvement suggestions from each of you. And the cool thing was that we got to visit a neighbor, a good friend. Well, he's okay. But and then they get to experience another facility and what the other facility does. And they just came back so enthusiastic because their eyes were open. All of a sudden it was like, wait a second, isn't a metal finishing environment such as Hixson's, isn't that supposed to be dusty, dirty, smelly, and unorganized? But it's not. It's clean. It's good. It's safe. They're measuring things. So those are the key things that we get to learn from our neighbors, but also initiate and build for our future.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ken. Jose. And now we're going to hear from Jason on supply chain integration.
We could probably make up a little time here because I've got a technical background and I tend to be overly direct. So my name is Jason Cox and I'm at Cox Machine. We're in Wichita, Kansas, and we're machine parts and fabricated components, primarily structural components. The supply chain integration process for us was the second wave of our C involvement. We spent the first year and a half, I think, going through all the processes that we just heard about and trying to get our internal operations lined up and get some good things going there. We certainly weren't done in a year and a half, but at least we had a lot of activities going the right direction. And then the second year, we really focused on the supply chain, looking outside of our organization at that point to try to find opportunities for improvement. As the C criteria are written, there's really a five-pronged approach that's been kind of summarized here. We need to figure out how to select our improvement projects. We've got to integrate our customers and suppliers. We have to qualify and measure our suppliers. Then we need to involve the suppliers in our lean strategies and figure out how to do long-term agreements or team agreements to support what we're trying to do. So our key practice, the main, most important one I think that we did was develop a supply chain management team, which is not strange or unusual or really that innovative. It just was completely necessary. So we put together a supply chain management team that included several of the senior leaders in our company, which I think was very important. With almost everything you do with C, I think you have to have support from the very highest levels of the company or it won't succeed. It also includes, of course, everyone that touches that process every day, the folks that are working with our suppliers and everybody else. That team is responsible for maintaining and distributing supplier ratings, communication with suppliers, and working with process improvements. The communication piece is that we have supplier meetings. We meet with each of our top 20 suppliers at least once a quarter and more often if necessary. And face-to-face whenever we possibly can. Sometimes it has to be done by telephone, but we try to do it face-to-face whenever possible. And just getting the communication and getting together solves so many problems. We have a set agenda that we work from, but the agenda always ends with the opportunity for process improvements. So what on earth can we do that would help you out? How are we hurting you? What can we do better? And lots of great ideas come out of those meetings. We focused on long-term agreements, both with material, making machine parts and assemblies. Our spend is going to be on raw material, hardware like bearings and and outside processing. So those three things are what we try to set up long-term agreements with our suppliers, pricing agreements, and purchase agreements. And then integrating our customers and suppliers into our improvement efforts. The suppliers is fairly easy with the meeting structure we have set up. It's just an agenda item on the meeting. We talk about the improvement processes that we had in place from last time, whether we accomplished what we were trying to do. With the customers, it tends to be a little more specific and direct. We just did one recently with one of our customers that's moving to a min-max system, and we did some internal value stream mapping and diagramming about what would happen with the parts on which particular days and how it wasn't really going to work very well. And then we got together with our customer and shared this information, and immediately they changed the variables for us that made it work really well. So a couple of things that I think we did okay. Focus on big potential. I mean, we picked our top 20 suppliers by spend. We had to start somewhere. We couldn't start by rating all of our suppliers, so in order to get the process working, we picked our top 20 and just focused on them and tried to do it really well with the top 20, and I think for us that was a success. We were able to spend more time on those top 20 and get our process figured out. Frequent meetings, like I mentioned, at least once a quarter, if not more often, for those top 20. Electronic commerce we're moving towards, everybody's moving towards. So we're working on electronic invoicing with our customers, or no invoices, just pay on receipt. System integration, like putting our customers, our suppliers' barcodes on our purchase orders so that when they get the purchase order, they can just scan their barcode on it and take it in their system. Electronic certifications, and we're working a pilot on electronic purchase orders now with one of our material suppliers. The next slide would be things that we learned, or you could say that we didn't do very well. We are frequently part of the problem, of course. We talked about this a lot yesterday. Anybody that has a customer that sends a rating, you realize that a lot of times you don't agree with how the rating came out and what you're being rated on. And of course, it's exactly the same way if we produce a rating and give that to our suppliers. And what we really want to hear is that we are part of the problem and there's something we can fix, and we do hear that. So they will tell us. They never told us before we started distributing those ratings. We had suppliers that maybe had a 40% delivery, 60% delivery, and we didn't really care about it, and so they didn't either. And so we send them a scorecard and it says 40%, and they say, hey, we got that there on time. Every single one of those were there on time. And could have been right, you know. So that makes us get better internally and figure out what's going on our receiving dock, how we make sure that stuff gets in a timely manner. And the other thing is not everyone will join you, both on the customer and supplier side. So somebody has to make the tough call that if a supplier is not going to join you on this journey, that the work has to be put somewhere else. Sometimes that's really difficult. Sometimes there are long-term alliances with particular suppliers. It gets a little bit easier since we have data, and it becomes a data-driven decision and not a personal decision at that point. But that's another good reason to have senior leadership on your supply chain team, so that if that decision has to be made, that it can be done and followed through with and supported. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Jason. Just wanted to know, Jason, as far as focusing on your top 20 customers, what percentage of your total revenue would that group really represent?
But 80%. 80% of our spend was with the 20. So it's 80-20 thing. So primarily that covers most of our spend.
Okay. And then also how did you go about making that introduction with the suppliers that sort of initiated embarking on that journey of integration with them?
We sent a letter. We made a letter that said, 3 months from now, we're going to start reviewing these ratings. We're going to have these supply chain meetings, and here's where you can look at your rating today and look at the format, give us some feedback, and we'll start this process in 3 months.
Okay, very, very good. Questions from the audience?
Just for me, just a statement and an acknowledgement. You know, some of the practices that you talked about may not be rocket science, or, you know, I forget how you said it, but the thing is, having a robust supplier management system among small and mid-sized companies is very uncommon. And so I acknowledge you for having what appears to be a pretty robust system, you know, that mirrors the kind of things that a lot larger companies are doing. And I'm glad to see this illustrated in, you know, small to mid-sized companies where a lot of times we think we can't do that kind of thing. So thank you for that great example.
Very, very good. Let's give Jason another. And I don't know if you were aware, there was one more question? Yeah. Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, not that I'm trying to ask everybody a question. Jason, with your company is small, our company is a small part of a larger organization, but we all get, as suppliers, the constant flow down from our customers of changing quality requirements, or just, you know, requirements in general. Once you started communicating with suppliers, because that's what this initiative piece is about, is creating a better team. Have you found a simple way to continue that flow down of changing requirements that we see? Or do you think it's not, at our level, it's not so much that you can hang on to it quarterly or annually and then just do one flow down of changing requirements?
I would say that we have struggled, probably as many have, with the very technical flow down, rev levels and things like that. You know, specific spec IDs and rev levels, and trying to figure out how to get that to our suppliers. I think everybody used to just put on their PO process to latest rev, and AS 9100C is making that less of a viable option. As the processors and the material houses get audited, they're having to request specific revisions. I think we've come up with a way, but I haven't done it yet, so I'm hesitant to say that it's the right solution. I think we're going to try to do something through our website where you can link back to keep a current set of the revisions. That particular technical requirement has been a challenge for us.
Okay, very good. Let's give Jason a round of applause. Thank you very much. And Jason, I hope you didn't get nervous by the music that started playing in the background. That didn't mean that you were going long or anything like that. Okay, for the seventh of the leadership processes, I'd like Kenny to come up to the podium, and then he'll address us on the new product processes. New product introduction.
I'm Kenny Heifner from CalComp USA. Some of you might more recognize SMS Technologies. We were bought by CalComp USA at the end of 2010. We started, I went to the C leadership training at the end of 2007, and I was stricken by the three-pronged approach of leadership, workforce development, and operational excellence. We had been doing operational excellence for a long time, and the problem with that is when you don't have these other two in place, especially the culture for it, it's like 3 steps forward and 2 steps back, and sometimes it'll even ruin the whole thing for your organization for operational excellence. So we didn't want to make that mistake the next time around. So we put a lot of effort into leadership, the leadership and culture part of it. In the whole year of 2008, we didn't really emphasize anything on operational excellence. We just worked on the leadership and culture thing, and it was well worth it because all the things that we've been able to do since then were easily sustained. And once we did that planning and got that leadership thing done up front, then operational excellence and workforce development just easily followed in. Next slide. So let's first look at the criteria for new product startup or new product introduction. How does your organization contribute to the immediate success of customer startup operations, including first article and early production efforts? How are processes like advanced product quality planning, APQP, and production preparation process, 3P, used to proactively ensure value for customers? And then finally, the last criteria is how are customers' needs for reduced lead time and high levels of initial quality considered in the startup process? Next slide. Well, let's first start out by talking about advanced product quality planning. It was a very dovetail thing for us because we were doing TS 16949, which is the automotive standard. But as you know, all of those standards all dovetail into ISO 9001. In AS 9100, Section 7, product realization, that's where you find it. APQP is meant to be a team process. Team in the sense of team within your organization, teaming up with the customers, teaming up with the suppliers, everybody working together. And so one of the most important things perhaps we did is once we'd established our leadership team based on the core values and some of the things that we've said here, we began to build customer-focused teams with the different disciplines throughout the organization to focus on the customer. We would do that just as soon as we had an opportunity. We have a business opportunity assessment, and as soon as we said green light, good fit for business opportunity, we developed a multifunctional team immediately and begin this process. Didn't have a contract. We want to get started on figuring out what it is the customer needs, begin to understand what they need right away. And in that process of new product startup, APQP, there are three other elements. There's the program, or prototype program, which is also known as the development process. And we go through three phases: prototype, pre-launch, and then production. And each time we go through those phases, we're going through that plan, do, check, act thing. While we're doing it, we figured out by coupling the 3P process with advanced product quality planning that we could actually do a Kaizen event as part of the new startup product, if you will. And instead of launching and then trying to figure out how to do a Kaizen event and leaning out the process, we were actually starting with the prototype, building it in the production system, just like we would production, so we could begin to get times and things like that to understand how we could improve the process from the very start. And then finally, the culmination of the new startup process is the production part approval process and the first article inspection. The focus is not just on the product, but also on the process and its capabilities. Our ability to mistake-proof, to prevent failures, and to be able to launch by building quality into the process. Next slide. This is the advanced product quality planning timeline. And let's see. You can see by looking at it that, and many of us are doing the process side of this, the earlier we get involved with the customer in this timing line, in this Gantt chart here, the earlier we get involved with the customer, the better the chances are we have of launching without issues and launching lean. So you can see that process design and development starts when? Simultaneously or concurrently with product design and development. So we're getting our whole organization involved right at the very beginning of product design, or as close up as early in the process as we possibly can. And not only this, bringing some of our key suppliers, those suppliers that are producing custom products or components for us, involved in that process as well. And then you can see we are all working together as we go through the prototype, the pilot, and the launch phase to make sure that our product and processes meet all verification and all validation as we go through that. And then each step of this process, we're doing plan, do, check, act. So we're doing that iteration. It's a learning process every time. And as soon as we've done prototype, then we're going to lessons learned on it. As soon as we do pilot, we do lessons learned. As soon as we do launch, we're doing lessons learned. And then there's that feedback loop of continuous improvement that Doug was talking about down at the bottom here that allows us to continually improve the process while we're producing it, so that when we go to next generation, we've got all of our lessons learned documented. Let me show you some of the documents that I'm talking about. Next slide. First of all, we start with our customers' special or key product characteristics. In other words, what is it that what is critical to the customer's design? So we can make sure that we dovetail that in with the process and you see the star there we're using as a special characteristic symbol. The first thing the team will do is a process flow diagram and find out where in the process those critical or key characteristics are taken care of. And that creates a dialogue and an understanding of the process from the very beginning. It allows us to ask questions of the customer that get us answers to help us build a more robust process to start with. The next thing we do is a process failure mode effects analysis, where we take those key characteristics or special characteristics and figure out how we can mistake-proof with them or how we can mitigate the risk around that. So each step of the process flow diagram is key to the failure mode effects analysis, and then the results of that to prevent the failures gets put into a quality plan or control plan you see in the corner down here. These are the engineering documents, and they're living documents, and we are continually, as we make improvements to the process, updating these documents so that we have the best and greatest, and we understand it as a team with our customer, with our suppliers. And then finally, those engineering documents get turned into work instructions that help convey that information and also the special characteristics carried throughout. And then we have a qualification process that we do with all of our operators according to the works instructions to make sure that they're qualified. Next slide. So that is how we build quality in, but we also want to launch lean. We don't want to wait until after the fact. So here's this is an actual chart that we did for the prototype on one of our products, and you can see the tack line there really is kind of you're not supposed to go over the tack line, those of us that knows how to do the Kaizen event on this, but when you're just doing prototypes, you're just trying to get close. And then when you go to pilot, you'll hone it in even more, maybe produce more products and be able to get better with this. So you're learning how to lean out the process and do the flow as you're actually implementing your startup process. Next slide. And not only are we working internally, but we are going outside of the organization. Many times we find out that we can lean out our process, but if our customer isn't leaned out, then they can't receive our process and process it. We get a bottleneck there. Same thing happens on the other side if you have a supplier that can't keep up. So it's a matter of doing value stream mapping across the entire supply chain and not just within our own organization. And then I think the final slide is continual improvement. What we're doing with this documentation and this process is building competency, intimacy with the customer's product and intimacy with the processes in order to continually build those processes and looking for ways to reduce variation around the nominal value. It's like Doug said, we're not just trying to get 0 PPPM. We know we have to do it. If we can get these disciplines in place, and as leaders, we have the responsibility to not only replace those that are going to be leading in our positions, but also to lead these teams that I'm talking about and to be able to champion and build cohesive teams throughout the organization. When you do that, the continual improvement process will just operate on its own. Everybody sees the vision. They will join in to make it happen. Next slide. So what did we learn? Well, just that. Empowered, customer-focused, multidisciplinary teams is the main ingredient for success. Product and process intimacy comes at a price in the beginning. Once you've developed these disciplines and have them in place, then being able to communicate. When you first put these teams together, they don't know how to talk to each other. Very uncomfortable. It may cost more money because you're involving people that have a lot of other things to do, but once they all get on the same page, it begins to pay for itself, and the cost of poor quality goes way down. Core tools are the living records of our very best. The FEMA, the control plan, the process flows are those core tools that become the brains or the database for our very best in building our customer's product. 3P and APQP work hand in glove with reducing quality, cost, and increasing productivity throughout the whole supply chain. The tools also help us, especially the process flow FEMAs, help us with mistake proofing. How can we prevent it from happening in the first place? We talk about having quality problems. After we launch, we don't want to use production as a lessons learned by trial and error. What we want to do is figure out ways to prevent those problems from occurring, because you won't prevent them all anyway. There'll be some that you don't know are going to happen. But if you prevent the ones that can happen and will likely happen, then those that do happen are fewer, and you can handle them when you do the launch. Makes your launch much more less painful. Improved design for design for manufacturing, design for assembly, design for test. All that comes as a result of having this mindset where we're looking together at ways that we can understand the product and processes and how we can how we can design a better widget. And sometimes we can't get those design things in right away, but as we build these core tools, when we go back to the next phase, we can go right in within the design phase, and this is where the customers want us to come in early so that we can tell them right off the bat, here's some things that you could do that would prevent a lot of the issues that we had, a lot of the quality fallout that we had the first time around. And then ultra effective ramps. What does that mean? Well, you know, I like what Doug said yesterday about, well, we just build a system that can handle it. And that's what you're trying to do when you go out to produce the customer's product, is you're building a machine that will produce at the tack rate or the demand of the customer. If the customer doesn't know, and a lot of times they don't, in our industry it's not so much that way, but a lot of the others, they don't have no idea what it is, then what is your peak demand so that we can build a machine that can easily go to that level, and we can design it to modulate it. And I think that's it. Any questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Kenny. I thought it was really impressive the way that you've linked those key characteristics all the way through the process before it actually goes into production. Great example of how to do new product startup very well. A question from the audience. It looks like we got a couple of them. So we get a mic to you. There we go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Did I hear you mention the automotive industry initially?
Yes.
You had. My sense is that's had a huge impact on your focus on making sure you deal with pre-launch of product. Did it, in fact?
Absolutely. The APQP process is not new. Failure mode effects analysis is not new. It's something that even I did a lot of training for the big three automakers when I was with shortly after I was with General Motors, and even they didn't. A lot of the suppliers didn't have the disciplines to put it in place. But the ones that did, they grew, and they're still here because they have those disciplines. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things we're doing is C is really is mimicking a lot of the things that were done in the automotive industry. Now, we know that there are a lot of things that aren't good, but we can learn both good and bad lessons from them. This is definitely one of the things we have to embrace. We can't let people tell us that, oh, well, our volumes are way too low and our mix is way too high, this won't work. We have to get past that and say, yes, we can do it. And we need to go out proactively. And that plan, do, check, act, cycle, a lot of people use that as a problem-solving approach. In this case, it's used as a proactive approach for preventing problems. And that's what we have to do, is become proactive in preventing things so that we have quality when we launch.
Another question?
I just wanted to acknowledge Kenny for his role in bringing this process to the C roadmap. He was one of the key supporters and contributors to getting this process on the C roadmap starting in 2011. So thank you very much, Kenny, and thank you now for completing the cycle by showing us your actual practices around that.
Thank you, Michael.
Really appreciate it.
Another question.
Kenny, on control plans, you've got the automotive background. I have worked automotive in a previous life. The company I'm at right now is strictly automotive, so trying to get people to wrap their arms around APQP is a little tough. But control plans, one of the things that I've noted with aerospace groups that have been around a long time, the control plans are basically built into the routing steps. And they're very well defined in the routing steps. And we have people coming in looking for an APQP type control plan as a separate sheet of paper that's a living, breathing document. In your facility, do you have it as a separate document because you're used to automotive, or do you have conditions where you've built it into routing steps and can demonstrate adequately to a customer, an aerospace customer, that it's built, that it's there?
We do have the control plans. We have all the documents that we see. There are customers that want us to show how routings are, or we want us to deal with routings in that way, so those are also accommodated. But we do have the control plans. I will say this, even with TS, you don't have to have the form. You just have to cover the material. So when if you don't want to do, if you want to stay with the routings, that's fine. Just make sure that all the content for that is there. Because we're not just dealing with product. You'll notice with a control plan that it has categories for processes. And what we want to do is we want to control the processes so we get the proper characteristics we're looking for. That way we don't have to make the product before we know it's a bad product. We can control the process parameters and be able to make sure that we're doing the product right every time.
Great. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Kenny. Let's give Kenny a hand. I think this has been really a valuable time. Hearing about how the actual leadership practices and processes are actually put in place has just been an incredible opportunity, at least for me, I know, and all of you as well. Please, I think it's a great opportunity for, as the rest of the day progresses, for each of you to maybe talk with these people as questions come up throughout the day. It's a great way to make this time more valuable, and I know that they'd be loving to share with you that information. Let's just give the entire panel a round of applause. Just for thank you so much.
I think we could have taken another, oh, here, let me turn on. I think that we could have taken another hour and really used this panel to great advantage. So I appreciate the fact that we really tried to squeeze a lot into a very short amount of time. So I thank the panel for, getting up here and making themselves available, and providing the leadership for the leadership track.